Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Have Words. I'm your host, Lara Samuels. Let's Have Words is, of course, broadcasting on WWHR Internet Media, and we're here every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and we're glad to have you aboard tonight. So, Let's Have Words is, of course, a talk show, and we cover a variety of topics. You never know what you're going to get when you tune in. So, we've covered, we had a show recently on green burials. We had a show on Satan. We had a show on a cancer cluster in Merrimack, New Hampshire, and its potential link to industrial pollution there. We had a conversation about bluegrass music. So you never know what you're going to get. We cover the whole gamut from I like to say from the mundane to the profound. So you never know what you're going to get. And tonight on Let's Have Words, we have a guest. I'm so excited. A lot of times we have a guest. We try to get guests on the show every week if we can, but that's not always possible. So a lot of times we just sort of pick a topic and shoot the breeze about it. But tonight we actually have a guest that I'm going to interview. And our topic this evening, you may be able to guess if you're looking behind me, is at my gang. My friends here. These are, of course, birds. Of course, they're owls, but there's, tonight we're not specifically talking about owls. We'll be talking about birds of all kinds and birding and, just about birds in general. So if you are somebody who is interested in birds, if you have questions about birds, or you want to just contribute to the conversation by giving us your favorite bird fact or whatever, you can chat in. I'm going to open the chat about, part of the way through my conversation with our guests. I'll invite people to put their comments in the chat, and you can participate in the conversation. We're not having people actually join via video tonight, since we do have a guest. So my guest tonight is John KAMERUD, and he's a friend of the show. We've known him for a while, and we know him primarily as a musician. So he's a fabulous musician, guitar player, and we didn't know. I mean, I knew that John K, my guest tonight, who I'm going to bring on in just a few minutes, is he's a musician, and I knew also that for a living he's a biochemist for a living. But what I didn't know about him, which we discovered about him through the show Let's Have Words, is that he is also an avid bird watcher. Or maybe you can just call. I'll ask him if this is okay to call. I call people birders or bird watchers, and what they prefer, I don't know. But he is an avid bird watcher, and so he has a lot of knowledge about birds, and so that's what we're going to do tonight. This is, instead of Let's Have Words tonight, it's Let's Have Birds. We're going to talk all about birds. So that's the topic. So please, if you are interested in joining the conversation, remember you can chat, put your questions and comments in the chat, and we'll open up the chat in about 10 minutes or so. All right. So I don't have a lot to say about birds. Usually, a lot of times what I'll do before I bring the guest on is a little monologue with my own sort of take on the topic. But tonight, I don't really know a lot about birds. I know that birds have feathers. I know that they build nests and that they lay eggs. And I know a little bit about the different kinds of birds in the area. I am somebody who puts out a bird feeder and a hummingbird feeder and stuff, and I do like to watch birds in my backyard. That's really fun. So I can identify a lot of the local birds, but not the more spectacular ones, more just the common ones. And bird watching is definitely something I'm fascinated by and interested in. So hopefully we're going to ask John all kinds of questions about birds. So I think it's time. Let's just bring him on. Just bring him on the show. Hi, John.
Hi, Lara. Nice to be with you.
Nice to have you here. Thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a great topic because we haven't done any. We were thinking actually of starting a series on different kinds of animals because this is something we didn't consider. But
Yeah, one thing I wanted to say right off the bat, and you already kind of alluded to this.
Yeah.
Is I saw that the title you have here is Birds and Bird Watching, and I wanted to mention that serious birders kind of don't like the term bird watching.
Oh,
Myself,
hey,
I don't really care,
let's
but
kick off the show with an insult. Why not?
yeah,
Yeah.
right. Major faux pas there, Lara.
Yeah, way to go.
No, actually, I think serious birders sometimes kind of take offense to the term bird watching, and I'm not really sure why. I think it's because bird watching sounds more passive, like you're just sitting there
Right.
watching birds, when in fact, what we're doing is we're going out in the field, we're finding the birds, we're identifying them, we're tracking. We keep, track of how many we see in different locations at different times a year. We're observing their behavior. So it's a lot more than just sitting there watching the bird.
Right. Right. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So birder is the appropriate term,
Yeah,
or
that's the preferred
that's the
term
better
is
term?
birder. Yeah.
Okay,
Like I said,
interesting.
I don't really care, but some people
Right.
do.
Right. That makes sense
Yeah.
because if it maybe diminishes, people feel that it diminishes the
Yeah.
role of the birder, in the in and the importance of it, the importance of birding. So so I wanted to ask you what do you think of my owls behind me here?
I love it. It's coincidentally, we didn't talk about this before the show,
Yeah.
but uh, those are actually kind of my favorite birds of
Oh, no
all.
way. I
That
just
I'm really
arbitrarily picked
fascinated
them.
by them.
Neat. Do you know who these? So I know a couple of these owls. I know
Well,
that the one on my left here is a barn owl. I know that. Those are
right, the one
easy.
up on the corner there is a barn owl. It
Yeah.
looks like a great horned owl below that.
Yeah, look at
Uh,
that. Look at the eyes. Wow.
yeah.
He looks freaked out.
Um, yeah, it's funny. I was gonna. Can if I show something video, can people see that?
I
If
don't know. I think Mark can get a
Well,
video.
I know we don't have screen sharing
Right.
here,
Yeah, it's different than Zoom, so we don't actually screen share now.
but I was going to show a couple pictures. I took this one. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
That's
No, that's
that's a
fine. I
great
can see.
horned owl that
Oh,
was
that is.
sitting in my yard this
Oh, no
summer.
way.
I knew they were out in the woods behind us,
Yeah.
but I never expected to see one sitting on my lawn like that. That's very unusual.
That is very
And
yeah.
I think we're going to talk a little bit too tonight about bird songs and calls.
Yeah.
And the great horned owl, that's what people might refer to it as a hoot owl, because if you hear it, it just does that hoo 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 hoo,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Okay. But the other really common owl around here is called a barred owl.
Oh,
You know,
barred owl.
barred, yeah,
So
not
barred
barn.
owls are different than barn owls.
Different than barn owl. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
going to show a picture of that I took this spring.
Oh, let me
I
see.
don't, I don't know if you can see this
Oh,
very
look at that.
good. That is a barn owl,
Oh, he's
barred
beautiful. A
owl,
barred owl. He's
and
beautiful.
the sound that they make, people claim that it says, "Who cooks for you?" So it's asking, "Who
Oh,
cooks for
yeah.
you?" But they
I've
go,
heard that.
"Who,
Yes.
who cooks for
Who cooks
you?"
for you?
That's what
Yep.
they sound like. And so if you
Yes.
don't see it, you can tell the difference from the call that it makes. And I just wanted one more picture of that.
Sure.
This one will be very hard to see, but right where we saw that barred owl,
Yeah.
near there in a hollow tree here is a little baby owl peeking out.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
So
so cute.
that was pretty interesting.
That's fabulous.
Yeah,
Wow. Yeah. So what kind of owl is that? The one that the baby owl? Do you
that
know?
was the barred owl.
That was a barred owl too.
That was the offspring of the one I showed
Oh.
before that. It was the mom was hanging out in the tree and the baby was in the hole
Yeah, you don't
there.
get to see. I mean, you probably see them more often just because you're looking for them. But yeah, you don't often get to see owls. It's exhilarating when you actually
Well, no,
get
they're
an
because they're
opportunity.
nocturnal, right?
Right, because
So
they're nocturnal. Yeah,
yeah,
so you
uh,
just don't get the opportunity very often, and it's just amazing. If
but
you
a
have
lot of
an owl
times
encounter, it's amazing. Yeah.
one thing, the reason I knew there was owls behind my house is because, see, crows hate owls.
Oh.
And if you ever hear like a flock of crows just going crazy and cawing away, and there's a good chance they're harassing an owl, because if they find an owl in a tree, They will dive bomb it and just harass it until it leaves. And the
Hmm.
poor owl is just sitting there trying to sleep because it's the middle of the day.
So the
Uh,
owl's just innocent in this
yeah, yeah. And
conflict.
I'm not really sure why the crows hate
Yeah, I was going to
owls.
ask, what's the source of the animosity? Does
I,
it go way back
maybe
in
yeah,
evolutionary
right.
time?
It's a family dispute from
From
no,
like
I think
30,000 years ago or something.
no, I assume maybe they feel threatened by it, or
Yeah,
their nest or their offspring are threatened by the owl,
yeah.
perhaps. But yeah, I heard these crows going nuts behind my house, and I walked out in the woods, and sure enough, I saw an owl fly out of there. So I knew there was one back there, and then a few days later, it was sitting in my yard.
Right.
Um,
So during the day, not I mean we could talk about owls all night.
I know we
All night.
could.
I'm perfectly happy to do that. No, but I do want to get on to other birds, obviously. But I was just curious. So if I want to increase my chances of seeing an owl, what kinds of things can I do to increase my chances? So maybe I don't know.
you know, there's no
Yeah,
owl feeders. So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, no, you just have to kind of know where
Where
you're
to look?
likely to see them. So
Yeah,
actually, this time of year is when they're active in. I think they're getting ready to mate,
yeah.
and you'll hear them outside, but at night, of course. So
Right.
you might not see them, you might just hear them.
Yeah.
And then, as I mentioned, if sometimes the crows will tip you off to where an owl
Oh, that's
is.
true. You can
Uh,
just follow the sound of the
yeah,
yeah
I can show you
noise.
one more owl that's very
Sure. Yeah.
interesting.
Let's look at another owl.
And
Why
this
not?
one is not nocturnal.
Yeah. Oh, they're not all nocturnal.
Well, this one is. Well, that's not showing at all, is
Huh.
it? Can you
That
see anything?
maybe if you
Uh,
turn it a little bit, maybe I can't see it.
yeah,
It's
I
just a
know.
big
I'm just seeing
glare.
it.
Yeah.
Well, that's okay. It's a picture
Yeah.
of a snowy owl.
Oh, snowy owl. Yeah.
So, snowy owls are native of the Arctic. They live up
Mm-hmm.
on the tundra.
Right.
And but every winter, there's a few snowy owls that come down to the United States looking for food, I think. And the picture I had there was one I took in Salisbury State Park in Massachusetts. Um, but the interesting thing about the snowy owls, besides the fact that they're beautiful, white, pure white sometimes,
Yeah.
and really neat looking. But because they're used to living up on the tundra where there's no trees, no shrubs or anything, they're looking for that kind of flat, treeless area here. And one such place is an airport, believe it or not.
Ah,
So the first time I
oh
saw a
no.
snowy owl,
Yeah.
I was in Minneapolis, and I read in the paper that there was a snowy owl that was seen at the Minneapolis airport. And so I drove over there on the service road, and sure enough, here was this snowy owl just sitting there on the ground right next to the runway. Um, Unfortunately, they don't encounter humans usually in their natural habitat, so they're not afraid of humans. So they often end up getting run over or something when they come down
Oh.
here. But
Oh,
yeah,
that's sad. Oh. You'd think that even if they didn't encounter humans, they would be more afraid of them, just because.
yeah, they're
But
not very
but
because
yeah, they're
that
just
one that
smart.
I saw at
Yeah,
Salisbury, it was on a kind of a marshy area. It was flat and just grass, and
yeah.
people were walking right up to within like 10 feet of it.
Wow, that's an incredible story, owl
Yeah.
story. So, all right. So, why don't we just for a minute before I open the chat? So, people are going to chat in possibly with questions about birds
Yeah.
or possibly owls. But I do want to just know, first of all, before we talk the about birding and about birds in general, why don't you tell us a little bit about what got you into birding to begin with?
Okay. Well, yeah, I think I've been burning for 12, probably more years, 12, 14 years maybe.
Yeah.
And I've always been interested in nature, since I was a young kid. I always liked nature. Um, and I remember I was reading an article, and it was about the loss of biodiversity and how so many species of birds are going extinct every year.
Yeah.
And so I figured, well, I better go out and see some of these birds before they're gone.
Yeah. Oh.
And there was where I was living at that time was in Indianapolis, Indiana. And there was, I saw in the paper, there was a bird hike being offered, open to anybody at a local park. So I thought, okay, that sounds fun because, I like to hike. That's my favorite form of exercise. I'm interested in birds. Sounds perfect. Well, I want to warn anybody who is just starting out that there's very little hiking involved in a bird hike. So I showed up there, and there was this group,
Yeah.
and honest, we stood in front of this one tree for about 45 minutes, just watching the different birds that flew in and out of that one tree. And then we did walk, but very slowly. And in 3 hours, we maybe covered a mile and a half. So it wasn't a big exercise thing, but
Right. Right. But being out is you're still at least out in nature. I
you're
mean,
out in nature, you're
which is good
outdoors,
for
fresh
you.
air. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's
Just being
great.
in the forest is good for you.
Right.
Yeah. But so do you do so you that was a group hike. So do you do a lot of group activities when you go birding, or do you go out solo a lot, or
Um, both.
both?
I belong to a club here called the Merrimack Valley Bird Club.
Hmm.
Um, there's other Audubon societies and bird clubs all over you can find, and they usually have organized hikes, weekly or semi-weekly, and usually they're open to anybody, so you don't have to join the club to go along. So if you're starting out, I would highly recommend going on some of these bird hikes because you learn so much from the experts that are on these hikes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I went out on a bird count once, but that's different, right? We like that's something that happens what annually or something. There's
yeah,
a
there's
bird count.
a maybe was it the Christmas bird count?
I think it was
Because
it was I was living in Arkansas at the time, but it was in Arkansas. But yes, it was the Christmas bird count. Yes.
yeah, the Audubon Society organizes the Christmas bird count
Yeah.
all over the country, and there's circles. I think I want to say they're 15-mile radius circles, and different groups take ownership of that circle, and they have to go out and count every bird they see that day.
Yeah.
And they send out in little groups, and uh, so usually you have a couple people together. One person's finding the birds, and the other person's writing them down. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a lot of
It was a
fun.
group of us, and I didn't know very much about birds, but I learned a hell of a lot just going out there with
Yeah,
other people who had did. And I was curious, like, why does that happen in the winter? I mean, why are we counting birds in the winter?
yeah, it's
Where
not
there are a lot of
ideal.
birds are gone, right? They're migrated
Right,
somewhere
right.
else.
So and
Yeah. Oh.
Christmas bird count, I think when I've gone on it, around here we might get like 28 species or something,
Right.
whereas if we go on a hike in the springtime, we might be seeing 60, 70, 80 species.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's the thing I was going to mention that really fascinates me about the birding, that I didn't have an appreciation for it before I started, was just how many different species of birds there are.
Yeah.
Um, Even around your own neighborhood, you might not realize it until you actually go out and start counting them and taking note of them.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of them are very elusive. Like but if you put out a bird feeder, you get some, but even then you're probably only seeing a handful of
Right.
the species that are in your area.
So
Yeah.
another little story about when I started birding there in Indiana. Um, so I started going on these weekly walks every Saturday morning. They had at a local park. It was called Beginner's Bird Hike, and I'd go there, and some of us beginners, and there were a couple experts that would take us around. And I was really impressed how they could identify birds by sound. They were just like, oh, there's a
Right.
there's a
Yeah.
Nashville warbler, and oh, there's a red-eyed vireo or something. And they had found a bird that way by sound and then sight, which is called a Blackburnian warbler. Um, I would wish I had a picture, but very small little bird. The males have this brilliant orange throat. It's just shocking how bright it is during the mating. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. And after I had gone to this beginning bird hike for a few weeks, I decided to go out on my own one morning on a Sunday at a different park. And I was out there poking around birding, and I met this other lady who was birding, and we started talking. And turns out she was kind of a novice also. And as we were talking, I hear this high pitched trill, and I go, that sounds like a Blackburnian warbler.
Oh, wow.
And I took my binoculars, and these things like to stay at the very top of the tree. So it
Yeah.
took me a long time, searching. Finally, I found it. I pointed it out to this lady. There it is. And she says, wow, you're an expert.
You impressed her,
and
huh?
and that's what really
It's
hooked
just
me. Then I'm like, hey, I can do this. I'm
impressed the
not an
ladies
expert
with my
yet, but
knowledge. Yeah.
I
Very cool.
actually found a bird by sound and found
Yeah.
it.
That must have
And
been a very, very satisfying
yeah,
to
so
finally
that's
do
still
that.
one of my favorite birds just from that
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, that's amazing. So how are you now at identifying birds by sound? Do you have a lot of I mean I was thinking about this because I wanted to show you this record that
Oh,
I found at the Greenville Junction shopping.
well, there you go.
Yeah, a field guide to bird songs. It's awesome. It has like it's just like a record, but it has all the different bird
Yeah, I think at the
songs on
time
it. It's
then
amazing.
one thing I
It's a
did was
double record.
I had from the library I got a CD set with bird songs on it, torn
Is that
birds.
helpful? Do you think that's the best way to learn? I mean, it's probably better than. I mean, it's probably a really good way to learn because if you just go out and listen, you're not going to necessarily be able to connect the song to
Right,
the bird unless you're with somebody that can help you. But
right. So yeah,
yeah,
I think listening to a CD, or now I'm sure they have it,
yeah,
uh,
yeah. On
other
your
kind of
you
media,
get an
but
app, a
right.
bird song app,
Uh,
certainly. Yeah,
yeah, I have come to mention it, I have an app on my phone.
yeah.
It's called Merlin. It's
Hmm.
a pretty popular birding app, and you can look up any bird there, and it'll show you a picture, give you hints on identifying it, and you can play the song or the call of the bird on your app. And now there's a new feature. I think it's fairly new. They actually have, you may have heard of this software that can identify music. Like if you play a song, it can tell you what the song is. Well,
Right.
this thing can tell you what the bird is. If you hear a bird
That's
sing and
incredible.
you record it,
Yeah,
and it can tell you what the bird
can
is,
tell you
and
what
it's
the bird is.
actually uh, amazingly accurate. I was really surprised how well it works.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's they're right. Like, there's a lot more resources for people. Do you think people are? So I think before we ask you another question, I think we can open the chat. Did I mention that? I mean, if anybody wants to, you know, chat in with some comments or questions, please feel free to do that. So yeah, that's all these resources. Do you think that birding is just as popular as it's always been, or do you think it's getting? Do you think are there a lot of young people that are birding and
I think it's getting more popular.
more popular? Really?
I believe, although
Yeah.
yeah, to your second question, it does tend to be older. The first time I went to this Merrimack Valley Bird Club,
Yeah.
I came home and I said, "Geez, I was
The youngest person there.
easily the youngest person there. Most of
Right.
them were like in their 60s, 70s,
Yeah.
even older. But that was a club that they've been birding together for a long time.
Right.
But having said that, I have met some young people, even teenagers, that are
Yeah.
very good at birding too. So, but I think it's just that when you're
Maybe
young,
it's
maybe,
something that appeals to older people more for
yeah,
some
there's more
reason.
exciting things to
Yeah.
do when you're a teenager than go look at birds, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. Right. So it's not like it's not just the lack of young people doesn't mean that it's dying out. It just means that when they get older, they'll be birding too, probably.
Right,
It's just
right.
something that you do in when you're an older person.
Yeah.
What's what's the furthest you've gone to see a bird?
Well, I'm not, unlike a lot of serious birders, I'm not really one to go um, I haven't really gone on long exotic trips.
I see. Just to see a
I
bird or.
Yeah, I mean, I went down to South Texas. There was a birding festival there at the Rio Grande River.
Mm-hmm.
It was really productive because there's a lot of species you'll see there that you won't see, in rest of the United States.
I see.
Um, I didn't go. I went to Mexico and to the Caribbean, not specifically to bird,
Mm-hmm.
but for vacation. But I brought my
But
binoculars
you went
along,
right.
and I saw a lot of species there. But if I were to go to like Ecuador or Colombia, which I do intend to do at some point here,
Yeah.
you can see a lot more.
Yeah, of course. There's more diversity more
There's great
species
diversity.
in
It's
the tropics.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to doing that someday.
That's awesome. Did you go to see that bird? So I don't. I'm sure you heard about the eagle that was just a couple weeks ago or something on the coast of Maine.
Oh yeah, up in Maine. That was
Yeah.
a
Did you go up there to see
I did
that
not
bird?
go up to see it,
Yeah.
and
I heard that a lot of birders were heading up that way to
they
check it
were,
out. Yeah.
and it was called a stellar sea eagle, and it's
Yeah.
native to Siberia. So sometimes birds get blown off course by storms and such, and they end up someplace they're not supposed to be. And the pictures of it are amazing, and
So do you know,
that's the
was
thing.
it like settling down there, or was it just, temporarily blown off course
I
and?
think that if I recall, that particular bird had been seen first on the West Coast, maybe like in
Oh,
British Columbia or something,
huh.
and then later it was spotted somewhere else in the Midwest. And they figured since it's so rare that it must be the same individual. And
Yeah.
now it's on the East Coast, so it's just kind of like wandering around, doesn't know where
Wow.
it's going.
Yeah.
And
Poor thing.
when I hear like some people, if there's a rare bird within a couple hundred miles, they're
Yeah.
gonna go look at it.
Yeah.
I've just been kind of busy, and I think, well, I could drive all the way up there, and I might not see it.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, when am I ever going to get to Siberia? So I probably never have another chance
Yeah, that's
like
right.
this. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you go out there? So I know I did a little, I've gone through phases in my life because I'm a person that likes to be out in nature too. I really enjoy nature and I like identifying things. I don't know why, but I used to go out into the woods with my little wildflower guide,
Mm.
and I got to know my wildflowers pretty well just by bringing a book along and I would check, when I'd see a particular wildflower, I'd check it off, So I had this like list. Do you do that?
Yeah.
Do you check off? Do you have a list of birds
Yeah.
and check them
That's
off?
where
Yeah.
most people get kind of hooked, and when they become they get serious about it,
Right.
is when you start keeping a list. So
Yeah.
I have a life list of every species I've seen in my life, and I have every year I start a new list for every species I see that year,
Wow.
and then it becomes kind of a competition with yourself. You're trying to beat last year's count or something. So
Yeah. I
that's
see.
really becomes a big motivator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can see why that because it's like a treasure, maybe like a treasure hunt or something.
Yeah,
You're
sort
kind
of
of
like
looking
that.
for yeah.
And so
So how many birds do you have on your master list there,
I've
your
got
life
about
list?
400 on
Oh wow.
my total list. Yeah.
What's the most interesting or rarest bird you've ever seen?
That's a hard one to say.
Yeah.
I don't know about the rarest, but some of the interesting birds I've seen just recently. I've been spending some time down in Florida, and there's a thing called roseate spoonbill,
Yeah.
which is a pink bird, big pink stork-like bird. The only pink bird I know of beside a pink flamingo, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. There aren't too many pink birds. Yeah.
no, and
No.
its beak, the name
Yeah.
spoonbill implies, its beak is shaped like a spoon. It's
Yeah.
very interesting
That's cool.
looking bird.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
that's one. There's
That's fun.
a wood stork that I've been seeing down there too quite a bit, and they look very primitive. They look like you know something pterodactyl or something
Yeah. Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was going to tell you my bird encounter that I had once. That my most exciting bird encounter. It wasn't a rare bird. It was a Canada goose. But one time I was walking into work, and I worked in this. It was like a big parking lot, and it was one of those. It was like an industrial area, or whatever. And I was walking along, and this Canada goose like landed on my head,
No.
and it like and she started to like flap her wings above my head, and I could just feel like how powerful her wings were because the air pressure was like boom, it was like crushing my head. It was so powerful, and I just stood out there with this goose on my head for I don't know 2 minutes or something, and I'm thinking, you know what? After I got over the initial like surprise, I was like, oh, this is kind of nice, you know. It was like,
What?
and then,
So it wasn't trying to peck you or anything? It
no, it
wasn't.
didn't want to. No, it was just flapping his wings, and everybody comes running out, and I'm thinking, oh, I'd rather sit out here with a Canada goose on my head than go to work. But everybody came running out, and they chased the goose
That
off.
is funny.
Yeah,
Because I mean,
that was my most interesting bird encounter that I've ever had. Yeah.
you know, those geese can be kind of nasty.
Yeah,
if you,
they were nesting or something in the area, so there
yeah,
was
if you
some
come
territorial.
close to their nest or their
Yeah.
babies, they can be. They'll
Yeah.
hiss at you, and
Right.
they might nip at you too. But
Yeah, she didn't try. Yeah, she didn't try to hurt me. But I don't know if she was there long enough. It felt like a long time, but it probably wasn't.
yeah.
Probably only a minute or something or less. Yeah.
Another interesting encounter I had, I think it was last winter. So to kind of set the scene, there's birds called nuthatches. You've probably heard of them.
Yep.
A nuthatch is similar to a woodpecker, but
Yep.
whereas woodpeckers, you might see them climbing up the trunk of a tree, a nuthatch is known for going down, like head first, walking
Yeah,
down
I've
the
seen
trunk
them.
of a tree.
Yeah, I've seen them
Yep.
walk there. But yeah.
And the
That's
ones
impressive.
around here are called mostly are white-breasted nuthatches. But there's another species called a red-breasted nuthatch that mostly they breed up in Canada. But in the winter, a lot of times some of them will come down here, and they have a very distinct call. It's I can't even imitate it, but it's been likened to the sound of a child's tin horn. It's like kink, kink. And I was in the I was at the Salem, New Hampshire town forest, walking through there last winter, and I had my camera with me because I'm starting to get into photography of birds.
Yeah.
And I heard this sound. I said, "Oh, that's a red-breasted nuthatch. I'd like to get a picture of that." And I looked around, and I couldn't find it. So I thought, well, I'm just going to lean against this big tree here and wait and see if it shows himself. I'm sitting there and I heard this sound, and I look up, and he's right above me, coming down towards me
Oh wow.
on the trunk. So I took my camera up, and I got an
Oh,
interesting shot of a
that must have been a great shot.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of little, it's not exciting, but little moments like
Yeah,
that
no, that
really
is
make it
exciting.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, when you have a really intimate, like an intimate encounter like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think that certain types of people get into birding? Is it a hobby for people who are particularly patient or people who are, I don't know. Is there
Well,
like a personality type that enjoys birding, do you think?
yeah. Well, I think birders have a little reputation of being nerds, kind of,
A little
and
nerdy, maybe.
probably not. Probably is true.
True,
you know,
to some degree, yeah.
right. And as nerds, we have a tendency to be a little bit uh, introverted, I guess
Yeah,
would be the term.
okay.
So there's a lot of introverts in birding.
Yeah.
So I know I've encountered that when I go and join like a different bird club or bird hike or something,
Yeah.
and I'm like, why these people aren't very friendly? Nobody's talking to me, But then I see they greet the other members, like long lost friends, and I think if you start doing it and you go to some new birding group, you just have to be patient because introverts are afraid of people that they don't know.
Right. Once they
So
get to know
after they get
people,
to
they're
know
fine.
you, they can be,
Yeah.
your best friend, but
Right.
they're afraid to talk to strangers.
Right. So don't be offended if you get
Yeah,
in if you're just starting out in birding and you go to a birding convention and nobody talks to you.
yeah,
You don't be offended by that.
yeah. But
Yeah.
they tend to be very nice people,
They'll warm
as
up
you
eventually.
mentioned.
They're slow to
Yes,
warm up.
yeah. And
But
most of them
yeah.
are interested in nature in general. So like you
Yeah.
mentioned, you like wildflowers.
Yeah.
Well, as we're birding in the spring, a lot of times we take note of different wildflowers that are growing.
Sure.
And in the late summer, when sometimes the birding gets a little slow, we start seeing a lot of butterflies. And so we start kind of, I don't keep a list or anything, but some of the other people in the group are very knowledgeable of different
Right. So there's
butterflies.
spillover into into the
Yeah,
groups that you're
yeah,
watching at the same time that you're out there. Yeah. Yep. Insects. That was my other group of organisms that I was very into going out and finding for a while for a portion of my life. Yeah. I still love insects, but yeah.
yeah,
I think there's. I think. I don't know. I'm like you. I like all creatures, and I like to be. And I for some reason I like to be able to identify things. I think it's a form of of bonding. It's like you get once you know something's name. It's just like with people. Once you know somebody's name, you feel closer to it or something. So you're more
yeah,
likely to, you're more likely to see it. You're more likely to to want to have more interactions with nature and stuff. The more you get to know the trees and the plants and the insects and
right.
it's just part of identification is a really important component of that. I think
Yeah.
So and it's fun. It's fun to be able to identify things out there in nature. So what do you? So if somebody wanted to get into birding, you don't need much, right? What do you bring with you when you go out there?
Oh, that's
Just
the nice thing about it.
yeah,
It doesn't take too much to get started.
yeah,
Mainly, you need a good pair of binoculars.
yeah. And now
And
you don't even need a book anymore, a field guide, because you can bring your
right, you
phone,
got
right?
your app, right?
You got your app, right?
Um, but speaking of binoculars, so well, there's two main types of binoculars. There's the Poro prism, which are kind of a little more, I think, traditional shape binocular. They're kind of like a Y shape.
Yeah,
And then the other one is the roof prism. And the roof prisms look like just two barrels that are side by side. And the Poro prisms have mirrors inside them, which adds a little weight. So I think people are tending now more to use the roof prism because they're lighter.
because they're lighter. That makes sense. Yeah.
And then the next thing would be the size of the binoculars. So most birders are using something called like a 8 by 40 or 8 by 42 or
Mm-hmm.
10 by 40, 10 by 42. The first number refers to the magnification.
Yeah.
So 8x or 10x magnification.
Yeah.
Now you might think, well, why not use 20 or
Right.
30x? Well, it turns out that at higher magnifications, your jiggling of your hands or any kind of movement will, disturb your image.
Yeah.
So usually it doesn't really pay to go above 12x
So
magnification for
12x would be the
binoculars.
max.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you use a scope, on the other hand, which is another piece of equipment that's on a tripod, you can go much higher magnification.
Right.
And then the other number, the 40 or 42, refers to the objective lens diameter, millimeters.
Mm-hmm.
So that governs, well, the bigger it is, the more light can get in, and also the wider the field of vision. Some people have these smaller binoculars, which might be like a 8 by 25 or
Mm-hmm.
a 25 millimeter lens, and they're fine. It's just that you have kind of a narrow field of vision, so it makes it harder to find the bird in your scope. You can see it with your bare eye, and when you try to get it in your view,
Yeah.
it can be a little bit difficult. But
Right.
those are nice because they can really fit in a pocket. So there's
Pros
nothing
and
wrong with
cons.
those. But most
Yeah.
people use, like I said, a 8 by 40 or 10 by 42 kind of
Yeah.
size binoculars. And something that I have this philosophy about all gear, no matter what your hobby or what, whether it's guitar or what anything else you're talking about, is that you have the low price range. The lowest stuff is like kind of worthless.
It's
You
crap. You get what you
better
pay for in
don't
that case.
even bother with
Right.
that cheap crap.
Right.
Then as you go up in price, you can get much better quality. And then it reaches a point where it's a point of diminishing returns,
Right.
where you
This
can
is true
spend a
with a lot
lot
of stuff.
more
Yeah.
and you can get something that's a little bit better, but the average person isn't going to appreciate it,
Right.
So with binoculars, I'd say they range from $30 to $3,000, and so I wouldn't buy a $30 pair. I think the sweet spot I'm talking about is around $200 to $300.
Yeah.
That'll give you a really good,
A nice pair.
nice pair of
And they're not
binoculars.
much, and the $3,000 pair is probably not that much better.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
in optics, the elite brand is Swarovski,
Yeah.
and I know some people have these
Yeah.
couple $1,000 pair of Swarovski binoculars. I
Yeah.
looked through them, and I didn't think I could
Yeah. It's
really
just,
tell the
at
difference.
that point, it's probably just like fashion,
Yeah,
like your Gucci bag, It's like, look at my fancy binoculars. I paid $2,000 for
I
them.
think
Yeah.
it's like wine. I would
Yeah.
say a $12 bottle of wine is a lot better than a
Yeah.
$3 bottle of wine. But
Yeah.
a $50 bottle of wine, it's kind of lost on me. A
Yeah.
connoisseur can tell, but I
Yeah.
can't tell the
Yeah,
difference.
it's the
So
same, and it's the same thing with instruments, right? I mean, like, how much
yeah,
does like a $10,000 violin sound than a, $2,000 violin? But a
right.
$2,000 violin sounds a heck of a lot better than a $200 violin,
Yeah,
right? So there's a point at which you can,
yeah.
you're kind of wasting your money if you're going
So I would advise people to
beyond it.
start out,
Yeah,
somewhere in that mid range.
that's a good.
Like I
Okay, so that's
said,
all you need though. Just binoculars, maybe your little checklist, your app.
yeah,
Do
binoculars.
you still bring a book though? I mean, I would probably want to bring a book. I like having a book with me.
Yeah,
Plus, you
it's
can't always count
useful.
on your phone working or whatever,
Right.
running out of batteries or whatever. I
I
have
don't
this book.
usually.
This
Oh yeah. So
we just got this the other day. It's
okay.
Sibley's
Yeah.
Guide to Birds. It's a beautiful book. I mean, it's too heavy. You wouldn't carry this out in the field with you,
Right.
but it's a beautiful book. Amazing. Sibley, did all of these illustrations, and they're
Sibley is well known as they're
incredibly
one of the
detailed.
top. I'd say the top two birding guides are Sibley and
And
Peterson.
Peterson's, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And like you said, that one's too big to really carry around with you.
yeah.
But I don't carry my guide around anymore.
No,
Sometimes if I see a bird and I don't know what it is or I'm not sure, I just kind of take mental note of it, and then when I
yeah,
get home, I look it up. Or now that I have a camera,
yeah,
which is a great instrument for you can take pictures of birds and then take them home and blow them up on your computer and
yeah.
really identify them that way.
That way, right? So you just wait
Mm.
to identify
Yeah,
when you get home.
yeah.
That makes sense. So like, if so what about bird? Do you feed birds in your back? I've heard that birds. This kind of surprises me actually. So birds in the winter, that they don't really need humans to survive. Like they'll come to your feeder and stuff, but they don't really need, like, if nobody put out bird seed all winter, the birds would be just fine. But that really surprises. I mean, they really they can find food
Yeah.
in the winter time and they have like the really high metabolisms, right? So
Right.
they have to eat all the time. So is that true, or like I
It
feel
is
like,
true. I mean, you think about it,
yeah.
birds have survived without us for
But maybe like this,
thousands
right?
of
That's
years,
well,
millions of
well,
years.
that's true,
You
of
know,
course. But I'm thinking
uh,
maybe the population levels that they're at or something like that. I mean, there might be a lot of mortality in the winter because of starvation or whatever.
I'm sure there is a lot of mortality in the winter,
Yeah, yeah.
and to some extent, maybe your feeders can help that.
That's what I
But
mean. Like diminish the mortality.
yeah,
That would be, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
detrimental to the population or something. But I mean, obviously they've been around.
Yeah,
They do
mainly
this
I
long
think
without
of
us. But
feeder as a way to get the birds to come out where you can see
right,
them, you know?
right. You're not doing it necessarily for them. You're doing it for you. So
Yeah,
you can so you can spot them.
yeah.
So
Although
so
I went out there this morning, and
yeah.
as soon as I cleared the snow out of my driveway, I trudged back to the backyard and filled my feeders because I kind of
Yeah.
felt bad for the birds. All their food is under the snow.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, you do feel bad for them out there. They look
Y-
cold, but they're
Yeah,
probably not. They're probably perfectly fine.
it's pretty amazing that they can survive, below zero.
Yeah.
And I guess they just fluff their feathers up. They have insulation, and
Yeah.
like you said, they have high metabolism, but then that takes a lot of food.
Right. They have to constantly eat, right? They can't
Yeah,
go long periods of time without eating like a reptile can or something,
right.
They have to eat all the time. I mean, that must
Yeah,
be like most of what they're doing is feeding all the time.
right.
And cleaning themselves. So what about bird baths? Are bird baths? I think of bird baths as like a luxury item for birds.
Yeah, they don't need it,
They don't need
um,
it.
but it's another thing that
They like it
attracts
though.
birds. Yeah, they
Yeah,
like it.
yeah. So
In the
they
winter
so
too,
so
it's
they clean themselves with water, but and also dust, right? Do a lot of birds
some
or
birds
some
do
birds?
take a
Yeah,
dust bath or something, like
yeah,
try to get, I don't know, maybe it gets the fleas or insects off of their
yeah,
out from under their feathers. But
yeah.
yeah, I have a bird bath, but oddly enough, I hardly ever see any birds using it. But I've been told that if you have like a water feature with like moving water, bubbler or something like that,
They like it.
that's very attractive to birds. Um,
So birds are in trouble. You mentioned. I mean, certainly climate change is affecting them, and habitat destruction, and so I mean, I'm sure there's some species are more threatened than others, obviously. But as a group, you were mentioning that you got into birding in part because you felt like a lot of birds are going to maybe
yeah, and I think it was
go
mostly
extinct.
well, the North American birds. It's the ones that go down to like South America for the winter, and there's a lot of clear cutting of the forest down there,
Yeah,
so they can't always find a suitable habitat to. And there's already birds there, so it's them going down there is just making it more crowded
putting
and
more
more
pressure. Yeah,
competition for
right.
food sources. So if they cut down a lot of the rainforest, it's going to make it very
Yeah,
difficult for them to survive.
yeah. Yeah, that's and climate change certainly is affecting the migration patterns and
Yeah,
where food resources are and all that stuff.
yeah,
Disease probably. Yeah,
I mean, climate change has had a big effect on their ranges. I don't
yeah,
know if it's to their benefit or not, but uh, like red-bellied woodpecker. You see a lot of them around here. It used to be never found in Massachusetts
right.
or New England. Cardinals were actually considered a southern bird,
Hmm.
but they're very common in the north now.
Yeah,
And as you know, we used to always talk about when do you see the first robin in spring.
yeah.
Well, now we got robins that hang around all winter.
Oh, we do.
Yeah, I saw a flock of
You,
robins the other day.
oh, no way.
So yeah, it's definitely the global warming has caused some of the birds to change their migratory pattern.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, do are so are there certain bird species around here that are not necessarily good, like that are invasive species, or that maybe are you know them, themselves maybe not like maybe causing problems for other
Oh,
birds or something, out competing other birds, non
oh,
out competing native species or whatever.
yeah. Most of the
Yeah,
birds we see are native, but there's a
yeah,
few species that were introduced. Uh, One that comes to mind is the English sparrow,
yeah,
which was introduced like 150 years ago. They were escaped and quickly spread all around the country and outcompeted some of our native birds,
yeah.
and became so common that they're not called English sparrow anymore. They're called
And
house sparrow.
house sparrows,
Um,
yeah.
but I don't
So
see
there
as
are, but
many.
yeah,
I don't see as many of them anymore. I see them in urban environments, but not
Yeah,
out.
I don't see many sparrows. You're right. I usually see them in the city, but I don't see many
Yeah,
sparrows in general out in
yeah.
the country.
Another
Yeah.
one that was introduced is the European starling, which is
Yes, I've heard of. Right.
also they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know if they really. Maybe they compete with the native birds, but
So we can help. We can help birds by maybe putting out food for them and maybe other things that they enjoy. But like nesting boxes, is that something that
nesting boxes are
you would
helpful
recommend?
for, especially for certain species.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people put out bluebird boxes,
Yeah.
and
You
the
don't see
reason,
bluebirds very often. Are they in trouble? I mean, I've seen
um,
like 3 bluebirds in my whole life.
really, no, I've had bluebirds in my backyard,
Yeah.
and
Okay. All
I've
right.
seen bluebirds around here.
Yeah.
They like a meadow. They like to live like on the edge of a meadow,
Okay.
and traditionally they nested in old trees, in hollow trees or holes that were made in a hollow tree. And because of, I don't know, I guess because of logging or, people not being as many dead trees in your yard,
Yeah.
um, they have fewer nesting holes like that. So that's why a nesting box is very helpful for bluebirds.
Right. Yeah. So lots of things that humans can do to help birds because we're instead of harming them, which is what we're doing most of the time.
Yeah.
So
And
go ahead.
the other thing you can do is to improve habitat even in
Right.
your own property. Planting certain kinds of bushes that yield berries that
Berries.
birds like, things
Right.
like dogwood comes to mind. I mean, I can't tell you offhand what the different plants are, but you can look
Right.
that up easily enough. There's a lot of different native plants that you can plant in your yard that will attract birds and be good for them.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I
And
think it's a. I think. Yeah. There's a lot we can do, and it's so rewarding to see them all come around. Like one year we had so many different birds. We had indigo buntings. We had all kinds of finches that were coming and just amazing. All their different colors, and we had catbirds, and we had I don't remember all the different birds that we had one year, but it was very diverse, incredibly diverse
yeah.
around here. So that was nice to see.
Another thing that you can do to help birds, which I think you might be a cat owner, is to
Keep your cats inside.
keep your cat inside, because
Yeah,
I've read that cats kill a lot of songbirds.
yeah, yeah. Outside, I guess cats outside are kind of like an invasive.
Yeah,
I mean, they're an invasive species basically. So they're
yeah.
just yeah. That's a good point. So so we only have a few minutes left. Anything else you want to say about birding? I just wanted to quickly do like a lightning round on on birds in general, but like what anything that we didn't mention that you want to say about birds before we do that,
Um,
or
Nothing
birding?
specific. Just
Yeah,
no, just that for me, it's a great hobby. It
yeah,
doesn't take much to get started, and you can find, know, you don't have to go to South America. You can go to your local park or something like that, and
yeah.
or hook up with a bird club online or something like that, and find out where their hikes are going to be held. And it's kind of a low key sport, but one that you can do. I know some birders who are like 90 years old, so it's something you can do for your lifetime.
Right, right. Very cool. All right, so I thought that at the end of here that we would just do like a lightning round on birds. So, what is a bird? That's my first question. So I've heard that birds are dinosaurs, right? There's a definite connection there. But like,
That's what they're saying now.
what makes a bird a bird?
Uh,
They fly.
I don't know. Well, not all.
Not all. There's flightless birds. That's
I
right.
think
Of course.
I
Yeah.
think all birds have wings, but
Right. But they
they
don't all
don't
fly.
all necessarily fly.
That's
I
true.
think all birds have feathers. I can't think of any that don't have feathers.
They all have feathers. Okay.
Yeah,
Do they
but
all build nests?
uh,
Not really. I
They
think some of them just like dig a hole in the
right.
ground
The
or
nest
something.
might be just a little depression in the gravel or something
Yeah.
for some shorebirds, or it might
Right.
be an elaborate nest in a tree.
Right.
Um, Birds, yeah, I guess
Yeah.
they're
Those
related
hollow
to
bones.
dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's funny because when we were kids, we were brought up to and told
Right.
that dinosaurs were these like ponderous things that,
Right.
and then they changed their minds about that. Said no, they were more agile and upright, and that was portrayed in the movie Jurassic Park. Remember the velociraptors could jump around really
Yeah.
nimbly, but they still were like reptilian looking. But
Yeah.
now, yeah,
I think
scientists
some of
have
them had
this.
feathers, right? Some of the dinosaurs had
Yeah,
feathers,
now they decided that
and they were endotherms. I think maybe even like they were warm
warm
blooded.
blooded.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what
Maybe.
it's been a
I'm
debate.
trying to
And I
remember.
think
It's been a
there's
bit.
some evidence now that the dinosaurs were warm blooded
Yeah.
and that, they weren't all covered with scales. A lot of them had feathers.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
And
now
birds
they
have
even,
scales, right? They have scales on like their legs and stuff.
I
Are
guess, yeah,
scaly,
yeah.
yeah. And do all birds have beaks? Most of them have a beak. I don't know. I'm just
Yeah,
wondering about this. Are there any beakless birds? Probably not.
beakless bird.
Beakless birds.
I
So,
mean, yeah, it's a beak or a bill, like a duck, call it a bill,
so
but
I
yeah,
looked this
same
one
thing.
up. There's 10,000, about 10,000. Well, there's we don't have an exact count but there's about 10,000 different species of bird
Right.
on the
That's
planet.
that's
Yeah,
what I like about just the incredible diversity
yeah, and there's yeah,
of, in every
they're
kind
so
of
gorgeous.
habitat. There's
Yeah,
birds that lives in the trees, the bushes, and the
right. They live in
grassland.
all the continents, all the different
Yeah,
climates. Yeah,
yeah,
there are birds that live in the water, diving birds, and you name it.
right.
Right, they're everywhere. You know what I like? I was thinking about beaks and how like Darwin's finches. You know how the beaks all take on a certain configuration depending on what the bird, like you were talking about the
Yeah,
spoonbill, depending on what they eat. I think that's so fascinating. It's such a wonderful example of adaptation and
right.
it's
There's
the different
some
kinds of beaks.
species
Yeah,
called the crossbill. They're red crossbill, white crossbill. That's another species that nests in Canada, and their bill is like overlapping like that.
yeah,
It's really weird looking, but it's adapted for prying open a pine cone so they can get the seed out of the inside of a pine cone. And
that's
those
incredible.
those crossbills, depending on the when the pine cone crop is not good in Canada, sometimes they'll come down here in the winter.
Yeah, yeah, they're amazing, and they use some birds use tools like crows, right? They have been seen
I've heard of
using
that. Yeah,
like to poke around and finding insects or something,
right.
or yeah,
Yeah,
or like I've heard that birds sometimes use. There's some birds that use cars to smash their nuts for them.
really.
I think I read
That
that
is
somewhere. I
pretty.
don't know.
That's pretty
I don't
clever.
know. That's amazing, and that demonstrates that they've they're like, oh, how can I use this car to my advantage?
Yeah.
That's something that's come about fairly recently. So
Well,
that's
I guess
interesting. They're pretty smart. So
they're not
there
bird brain. It might be a
there are
misnomer then.
right. There are probably some birds that are smarter than others, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, they're right. They can count. So a lot of birds they have been demonstrated in like laboratories, maybe just parrots and things, but they can count and they can identify like shapes and colors, and they can do like comparisons, big, small, stuff like that.
Yeah.
They're pretty smart little creatures. So what is one more question? Let's see. I'm going to pick one off my list here. So let's see. Why do birds sing? So what's going on with the song? So most birds have a variety of songs, right? They have different
Yeah, that's
for
something I was
different
going to talk about
reasons.
too. Is
Yeah,
so
yeah. Go ahead.
really, most birds have a song and a call, and
Yeah.
people don't know the difference between it. Um,
Oh, okay. That's
when I
interesting. Yeah.
first figured this years ago, I remember in the spring I was hearing this, And I kept hearing that, I'm like, what is doing that? And I look up, I see a chickadee up there. That can't be it, because everybody knows a chickadee goes,
Chickadee
chickadee.
dee dee. Yeah.
Well, it turns out a chickadee is their call. That's how they just talk to each other.
Yeah.
That Phoebe, that's their song. The song is something that the male only does usually and sings to attract a mate or to stake out a territory. So,
Hmm.
like cardinals, we all know that whistle of a cardinal. It's pretty
Mm-hmm.
recognizable. That's the male singing for a mate or staking out his territory. But cardinals also have a call, which is just a kind of a metallic little chink, chink, chink that when they're in the underbrush, they're kind of talking to each other like that.
Yeah. That's so right. So they have different songs for different occasions.
Yeah,
For different
right.
yeah, that's amazing. I was trying to think. I'm reaching back in my brain. We're wrapping it up here, but I was reaching back in my brain for something I heard about it. Chickadees like modifying their song depending on, I can't remember. Oh well. It had something to do with human interaction,
Oh,
like
really? I
things.
didn't know
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. But just amazing. Like they're. So we have some bird song going on right now that Mark put together. I don't know if you can hear that, but just
No,
what a
yeah.
wonderful thing to
Yeah.
hear all the birds singing and doing their
Oh, I do
thing,
kind of
and
hear
they're
it.
out there.
And then, of
Yeah.
course, I'm sure you probably heard a mockingbird, which
Oh yeah, yeah.
which sings like copycats number of other birds.
That
Sometimes they
right,
sound like a gull or sound like a hawk or sound like
right.
something else.
Yep. And yeah, they're amazing. Some of them are amazing imitators.
Hmm.
Yeah. What was like Mozart had that bird that he loved so much, and like he either based I forget. Mozart had a very famous bird that
Oh,
he
really?
that could either could sing his one of his compositions, or was the inspiration for one of his compositions or something. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, this has been a very fascinating discussion, and now I
Yeah.
know this. Now I have this whole other side to you that I didn't know existed. This
Yeah.
birding
As you can
side.
tell, I could talk for another couple
You could.
hours
I
about
could too.
birds.
I love it. We like I said, we might be starting our animal series. I love talking
Mhm.
about different. Yeah, just because the knowledge is always growing, and we learn more and more about. And I think the more we learn about animals, the more we discover how complex they are, and like how
Mhm.
complex their lives are, and they've got a lot more going on in their brains than we give them credit for, I think,
Yeah.
too. So
Yeah.
yeah, so thank you, John, for coming on. It's been an
Yeah.
awesome discussion, and we will hey, there we go, there went John. So wrapping up another session of Let's Have Words. This has been our 8th episode. We've done 8. This is number 8, and we are always looking for people to come on the show, and just like John, if you have something that you're interested in, or something you think people would be interested in hearing about, please, we'd love to have you on the show. You can email us at wwhrmedia@gmail.com and just tell us what you'd like to talk about, and we will definitely entertain the possibility of having you on the show. We cover all types of topics. You never know what you're going to hear about, and we just like the art of conversation and the joy of conversation, and that's all. That's what it's about. It's about keeping those lines of communication open. So, see you next week.